Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. It's episode 182, and Jenny, I've been completely engrossed in some research this week.
Oh yeah? What's got your attention, Mark? Something shiny and new in the tech world, I'm assuming? Spill it.
Well, yeah, but this is something that actually has a really profound impact. It's about using AI for screening speech and language disorders in children.
Okay, that is interesting. I mean, we've talked about AI in healthcare before, right? We did that whole series on diagnostics. But specifically for kids' speech, that feels important, like crucial important.
Exactly. And here's the thing. There's a pretty significant shortage of speech-language pathologists, we call them SLPs, across the country. That means kids who need assessments and help are often facing really long wait times. Months, sometimes even longer.
Right? I've heard about that. It's a huge hurdle for families trying to get their kids the support they need, especially for early intervention, which is, so important for these things.
Precisely. And that's where this AI research comes in. They're developing tools to help bridge that gap, to make screening more accessible and faster. Think of it as a first line of defense.
Okay, wait, how does that even work? How can AI screen a child's speech? Is it listening for specific words or, how do you even train a machine to do that?
Good question. So one of the tools they're working on, and this is from research coming out of places like the University at Buffalo's AI Institute for Exceptional Education, is called AutoRSR. That stands for Automated Redmond Sentence Recall Test. Basically, it uses AI to analyze how a child repeats sentences.
Automated sentence recall. Okay, so it's listening to, fluency, pronunciation, the rhythm of their speech, that kind of thing?
Yep, it's analyzing the speech patterns, the prosody, which is the rhythm and intonation, the pauses, the little nuances that a trained SLP would listen for. And, get this, based on their studies, they're saying it's achieving about 90% accuracy compared to a human-administered test.
Wow, 90%? That's quite good for a machine listening to how a kid talks. Is that based on just a few kids, or is it a larger study? What's the sample size we're talking here?
It's based on their ongoing research programs. This isn't just a small, isolated project. They're testing on significant data sets and looking at expanding this. And they're also working on something else for a different kind of challenge called Extended TROCR.
Extended TROCR. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, doesn't it? What's that for? Some kind of robot that traces things?
Haha, yeah, a little bit. Extended TROCR is for something completely different but equally important. Identifying potential signs of dyslexia and dysgraphia through handwriting analysis.
Handwriting? Okay, that I didn't see coming. How does AI look at a child's handwriting and flag potential issues? Is it judging their penmanship?
So, it's using optical character recognition, OCR, like scanning documents, but it's specifically optimized for the unique ways kids with dyslexia or dysgraphia might write. Things like letter reversals, writing B instead of D, inconsistent spacing between words or letters, or text crowding where everything is mushed together.
That's fascinating. So it's learning the common visual patterns associated with those writing difficulties?
Exactly. They're training it on thousands of child writing samples to recognize these specific patterns. The potential impact of these tools, just from a cost and accessibility standpoint, is pretty significant. Think about how many kids struggle and how this could help identify them sooner.
I can definitely imagine. If it can reduce the cost and the time it takes for that initial diagnosis, that really does open up so many doors for families, especially those in underserved areas.
The research mentions that something like the automated RSR test could drop the cost per assessment from over $300 to maybe just a few bucks. Imagine, a few dollars versus $300. Think about the number of kids that could help access screening.
That's a massive difference. And it must help reduce the wait times we talked about too. If an AI can handle that initial screening layer, it frees up the human SLPs for where their unique human expertise is most needed, the actual therapy and personalized intervention.
Precisely. One expert from the research put it well, saying these fatigue-resistant AIs don't replace SLPs, they amplify scarce human expertise. It's about providing support, not taking over.
That makes a lot of sense. But okay, potential challenge incoming. What about different languages? Kids speak all sorts of languages and dialects here and around the world. Can these AIs handle that complexity?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the big challenges they're actively working on. The research highlights that current models can see a dip in accuracy for non-English languages, partly due to dialectal variations and just not having enough training data in those specific languages.
Okay, that's a key point, If it only works well for English speakers, it's not really addressing the accessibility issue broadly for everyone.
Right. But they're actively tackling this. They're working on expanding the phoneme banks, which are basically the library of sounds a language uses, like the building blocks of spoken words, for languages like Spanish and Cantonese. And they're also exploring something called federated learning.
Federated learning. Remind me what that is in this context. Is that like connecting different databases?
Think of it like the AI learning from data without the data actually leaving the location where it's stored. So, the AI model can improve by learning from diverse speech samples around the world without all that privacy-sensitive audio data having to be centralized in one big place.
Okay, that sounds smart from a privacy perspective, especially when you're talking about children's data. Which, of course, brings up another big question: privacy and ethics.
Absolutely. When you're recording children's speech or analyzing their writing samples, privacy is absolutely paramount. The research naturally touches on this, recognizing it's a core concern.
So what are they doing to address those concerns? Parental consent is an obvious one, getting permission first. But what about the data itself? How do they protect that?
They're looking at several mitigation strategies. Things like differential privacy layers, which essentially add noise or small alterations to the data to make it much harder to identify individuals while still allowing the AI to learn the underlying patterns. They're also working on something called adversarial debiasing during the AI training process.
Adversarial debiasing? That sounds intense. Like an AI fighting itself?
It kind of sounds like it, doesn't it? But basically, it's a technique to help reduce bias in the AI model itself, so it doesn't unfairly flag or miss potential disorders in certain groups of children based on factors like their background or where they live.
Gotcha. That's really important, making sure it's equitable. And for parents who might be worried about recordings or writing samples being stored somewhere forever, is there a plan for that?
The research suggests exploring options like on-device processing, where the analysis happens right there on the device. Imagine a tablet. And the data doesn't necessarily get sent elsewhere for long-term storage. Plus, the idea of automatic deletion clauses built into the system after a diagnosis is made or after a certain period.
Okay, that definitely helps ease some of those serious concerns. So, zooming out a bit, looking ahead, what's the future for these ACI screening tools? What are the next steps?
The roadmap is pointing towards seeking FDA clearance as a medical device. That would be a really big, significant step, validating their clinical use, and also getting CMS reimbursement codes.
Why are those things important? Like, why does FDA clearance matter in this context?
FDA clearance means it's recognized as a legitimate health tool, meeting certain safety and efficacy standards. CMS reimbursement would mean that schools and healthcare providers could potentially get paid by insurance or government programs for using these AI screeners, making them much more viable for widespread adoption, They become part of the system.
So that really paves the way for it to be used in schools regularly as a standard part of their process?
Exactly. The projection, based on the research, is that by maybe 2028, over half of U.S. preschools could be integrating these kinds of tiered screening systems. The overarching goal is to significantly cut down those special education evaluation delays, getting kids tested and on a path to support much faster.
That would be quite impactful for so many kids and families. Avoiding that frustration and delay early on.
And importantly, are they looking at integrating these tools into existing systems, like teletherapy platforms, which became so common during the pandemic?
Seems like a natural next step, right? Making it easy for SLPs working remotely. While the research didn't explicitly detail teletherapy integration as a primary focus yet, the mention of the AI orchestrator tool that helps automate administrative tasks for SLPs feels like it's designed with that kind of remote or distributed support model in mind.
So, the AI isn't just screening the child, it's also helping the human SLP with the paperwork side of things too? That seems clever.
Yep. Automating things like SOAP reports, those are the standard progress notes healthcare providers use, and helping with personalizing intervention plans based on the AI's analysis. Essentially, freeing up the SLP's time to focus on the actual therapy sessions, the human connection part.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's about leveraging the AI to handle the more repeatable, data-heavy tasks, leaving the human expert to do the complex, empathetic, tailored work.
Precisely. It really feels like a step towards making these crucial early interventions more accessible and efficient. There are challenges, yes, ongoing work around data diversity and ethics, but the potential benefits for children are quite significant.
It's definitely a space to watch. We should keep an eye on the FDA and CMS developments. Thanks for breaking down this research, Mark. Really interesting stuff, important stuff.
Anytime, Jenny. It's one of those areas where you see technology genuinely making a difference in people's lives, especially the youngest ones. All right, folks, that's it for this episode of Podcast Name. We'll catch you next time.
Bye, everyone.